Alright, so I'm making this video because I have an ADHD brain, I can't focus, and I pulled up YouTube and I saw this video from the Primogen. I'm leaving Vim,
Absolutely.
and basically he goes into some of the issues that people have with getting Vim going, some of the config issues, and a lot of the comments talked about having the IDE set up in Vim or Neovim is just a pain. So this video is to show you the grass can be greener on the other side. You can have your cake and eat it too. I think a lot of the people that are like stuck on Neovim, you could accomplish 98% of the things that you would want to accomplish in VS Code. So yeah, this video kind of combines the workflow that Neovim users want to have with the IDE experience of VS Code and mashes the two together into a productivity feels good machine. So yeah, this video applies whether you're on Windows, Mac, or Linux. I do go over some macOS window management options, so what you see here is available in macOS, so do keep that in mind. So you're someone who watches someone like the Primogen, like myself, and you're like, hey, I want to give this Neovim thing a try, but you looked into getting the config set up, it was just too much work, or you spent over a week doing the configs and you still don't have it the way exactly you want it in VS Code, but you still want some of that Neovim goodness in VS Code. This video is for you. Or if you're like, hey, I want to use Vim motions on VS Code, I want to maximize my current Vim extension, but I don't know how, this is also for you. If you're a veteran, you might learn a thing or two, maybe some nifty keybinds, but I really think that my workflow is super comfy, and I think it'll fit with a lot of people's like desires without actually fully taking over your system, turning it into like a keyboard only environment. There's a lot of times where being able to just click around is really easy and really nice. For example, in your Git repository, I don't care what you tell me, lazy Git is never as nice to work in as this. I refuse to believe people who say that lazy Git is easier to use than something like the Git lens in VS Code. There's no way. I mean, maybe people like that exist out there, but being able to see diffs in your editor in a very pretty way is just so much easier than the lazy Git environment that I tried using for some time. But I know a lot of this is personal preference, so why even bother customizing your development environment? First things first, you can get super familiar with your tooling. Being able to know all of the things that are available to you in VS Code is gonna make your life much easier. A lot of stuff that I'll be doing, people will be like, that's like possible in VS Code. It's like my coworkers have looked at my IDE setup and they asked me if it's even VS Code because it doesn't even look like VS Code when I'm actually editing. 2, you can improve physical comfort of coding and finger strain, and this is mostly due to Vim motions. But Vim motions with the right editor keybinds and a window manager setup, you really minimize the amount of movement that your hands have to do. The mental overhead of trying to figure out which application you're trying to use. And so I would highly recommend getting Window Manager and Vim Motions for that reason. And then the last reason is everyone loves to show off their cool environments, and it looks cool. It makes you feel good inside. And I realize these configs and my workflow aren't actually the most like optimal or efficient things. Maybe it is pretty optimal. I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest, because it feels good and makes me enjoy coding. So I think that's worth it more than real efficiency gains. I truly do believe though that like my configs and the way that I have things set up are actually more efficient than if I were to just click around with the mouse. But in the scene of life itself, whether or not you are actually more efficient, I don't think really matters. If you hate your job and you hate what you do day to day, then who cares how much money you make and who cares how efficient you are. Here's what I tell myself if I could go back 5 years and start over, is I tell myself to use VS Code and don't bother looking into another editor. VS Code has so much community support and tooling around it. Pretty much all languages have LSP support with VS Code, so you're never going to have an issue with your language doesn't support it. And there's a lot of environments like, for example, Salesforce and random debuggers that are just built for VS Code that aren't built for anything else. This is just one of the many reasons why VS Code, as of right now, is the most practical editor for the average person. It allows you to get all of the amazing community tooling and support while also customizing it to be just as efficient or as good as Neovim in most ways. If you're watching this and you're like a junior college student or someone who's just casually coding, I definitely would recommend using VS Code and learning what you're doing as you're writing. But if you are someone who's like senior and you have a lot of domain knowledge over what you're working on, I would highly recommend Cursor, not because of the chat agent per se, but because the inline completions are much better than anything that I've ever used. And I have used majority of the code completion tools like Copilot, Maven, some of the other like niche ones that allow you to select your own model. Cursor just has the best auto completion and tab to cursor repositioning that I've used, so this is why I use Cursor. The agent is actually fairly useful for well, we'll get into more of Cursor later on, but I would say if you're a senior dev and you know what you're doing already, Cursor just improves your efficiency. There's a lot of problems with it, but it's better than anything else as far as AI assistants, and so I don't see why not to use it if you make it into your workflow the best way. And I'll kind of show you the way that I integrate Cursor into my workflow to improve my efficiency. All right, so I'm gonna get started with my VS Code configurations because I think that this is probably the best place to start. Before we do that though, I do have to talk about extensions. So when you install VS Code, so first off, obviously you need the Vim extension. If you don't know Vim or Vim Motions, then I wouldn't continue watching this video. I just go and look at one of the videos that I'll link in the description. Ben Awad has a very good tutorial on how to use Vim Motions, so I would suggest watching that. Even though it's years old, it doesn't really matter. Vim hasn't changed since like the 90s or older than that, so don't worry if it's old. Another extension that I highly recommend is VS Code Harpoon. This is quite literally a clone of the functionality of Primogen's Harpoon plugin. Super useful, allows you to pin files to a keystroke and switch between those files. So I'm just going to walk you through my workflow. You can pin it by doing, in my case, leader A, and this allows me to pin this to my quick access file. Then I can pin, for example, the schema file. And then later on, if I'm working in some other files, like I'm in some other pages and I'm doing a bunch of other stuff, I can immediately come back to the original page that I was working on by always pressing leader 1, and then it'll take me to the first file in my list here, as you can see. So leader 1 takes me there. And then leader 2 would take me to the second index. So leader 2, well, I guess the second line, not the second index, but yeah. And then you can edit the file here. So if you want to remove some, you can do that. And it just allows you to very quickly pin a page. So this is a pretty unpopular extension, but I think it's super nice and I haven't had any bugs with it. So I highly recommend if you're coming from Neovim or trying to emulate the Neovim functionality. Another extension that's super nice to have, I wouldn't say necessary, is VS Code to do highlight. And this basically allows you to just put some highlighting on some things. So when you're coming back to it, it pops out of your screen. Pretty common in a lot of the Neovim all-in-one configs that you can just pull down. And that's really about it. All the extensions here you can see are pretty specific to web dev, and some of them are specific to my work, like Profit, which is a debugger for demandware on Salesforce. This is just an example of an extension that exists in VS Code that just doesn't exist in Neovim or anywhere else. The tooling support around VS Code is super nice. Okay, so you got your extensions. One thing that I would highly recommend when you're installing extensions is be very mindful of the performance impact of extensions. I would highly recommend going through here every so often, and if you feel like your VS Code's getting slow, you probably should look at your extensions and be very conservative on what extensions you add. Also, this extension, Pretty TypeScript Errors, is really cool, but honestly, like when I'm getting type errors in my code bases, it's usually going to be some super obscure, like generated type, and it's not even readable anyway. So I usually am able to just throw it into like Cursor agent and ask it to give me a human readable output of the error prompt, and that's going to be much more useful than trying to read this error message yourself. This is my theme, OneDark Pro. So this theme here is, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm so used to it, but I've tried so many times to move away from a theme, and I literally always come back to this theme. Like I'll use another theme for a week or two, and I end up just using this again because the LSP support is actually really good in TypeScript, and I'll show you some of the configs that I've done to improve it even more, but the color coding is super precise and useful, way more than you would think. So I highly recommend using this theme. I know there's other themes, this is all personal preference, but the way I have it set up, it's actually more than just like color coding. It's or just like pretty. It's very practical as well. Okay, and then material icon theme. just because like having icons next to your files is kind of nice, and it just makes it easier to quickly like see things visually instead of trying to read the text. GetLens is a very powerful extension that adds things like inline blame commits on hover, and there's like debouncing and a lot of performance things that they've done to make this very nice. I went through a whole thing on Neovim trying to find a plugin that had inline blame commits, which is a very useful feature in my opinion. Especially because you're able to do stuff like hovering over these to see diffs in line. This just doesn't exist in Neovim and any extension that I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can tell me that I'm wrong in the comments, but being able to take a diff and then immediately, or a commit and immediately go to that link is super handy. This is just one reason. Another reason to use the GetLens extension is that when you're in your source control pane, being able to click here to get your Git graph is super nice, and it includes a timestamp in a relative format, as well as looking at your stashes, for example, and being able to pull them in very easily. In my experience, this is way easier to actually understand what you're committing visually than something like LazyGit. And with something as important as Git and making sure that you commit the correct things and don't commit the wrong things to a production environment, I would consider this essential to just having clarity and knowing for sure that you're not pushing something incorrectly. So that's just the little thing. That's my little blurb on GetLens and not using something like LazyGit. And by the way, I'm sure that it's mostly just a skill issue with LazyGit, but to be honest, I don't really care. It's not like it's more efficient in reality to use something like LazyGit, and to learning all the keybinds and things like that really doesn't make much of a difference in time. So for my workflow, when I get to Git, it's sort of my time to sit back, relax, and sort of go into review mode. And that's when I'll like pull out my mouse and just kind of scroll through the code here and have a look through. Usually I kind of am at a different mind space at that point, and so it's completely fine for me. Okay, and then finally, like the last extension that I find really useful, but it's really not that critical to my workflow, is Code Spell Checker. I'd recommend this to pretty much anyone. It's a great extension, really performant, doesn't really have any downsides. All the other extensions that you see here are specific to the code that I work on, so they probably don't apply to you. But if you work in web dev, these could be some useful extensions to look into. All right, so I'm just gonna go through and explain my settings now. All right, so this setting here allows you to search like so, and then press escape, and it clears the highlighted text. Now without this setting, if I were to search and then click escape, as you can see, the text is remaining highlighted, and then you have to like, I don't even know how to do it without it, to be honest. So you keep this in here, you're searching for something, you find it, you click escape, it goes away. Vim.handle keys. So these are related to being able to search. So if you still want to use the built-in VSCode search, which is super powerful, and being able to do stuff like find and replace very quickly in the once in a blue moon moment that you need to, this enables that. Then this enables doing a find all or select all. Okay, vim.include search. So this highlights the selected text. So if I change this to false, now you can see that whenever I search for something, it only actually highlights once I click enter. But if I do true, I start typing, it immediately starts highlighting. These two here, just set the highlight color. Use system clipboard allows me to paste something from my browser, like copy something from my browser, and come over here and paste it in. Super nice. I can also press P to paste it. I don't really mess with registers, to be honest, because I don't really care. And it's not that really, registers, in my opinion, aren't something that most people are going to need to use. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the future I'll change this, but I feel like most new people, they just want to paste something. So this lets you do that. Use control keys. If you want to actually control V, or like command V, command C, you need to turn this on. Highlight search is the same thing as include search, but when you press enter, it stays highlighted as you navigate to it, and then you press escape, gets rid of it. So the surround plugin allows you to change things that surround a block. For example, let's say you want to change the quotation marks for an apostrophe surrounding this bar. You can change surround quotation marks with the apostrophe, and it will replace all of the surrounding quotation marks. These are some language specific configs that I have. We'll skip over some of these other settings. By far, out of anything in this video, if you absolutely must set this setting. This enables the Vim extension to run in a separate process from the VS Code or cursor process, so you have much greater performance when using the Vim extension. This is a must. A lot of people that complain about Vim being slow on VS Code don't have this setting, so you must have this setting. To do highlight keywords, this is just great. Some of these other settings are styling. So if you want to take advantage of the same theme as me, here are some of my theme settings. So I have one dark and bold and vivid, and then I also have my color customization, and here are the additional language rules that I have for. All right, moving on to the meat and potatoes. This is navigation. This is my personal preference. You can change it to be whatever you like. Control HJKL basically allows me to move around, as you can see, going to the left, going over to my agent on the right, going back to my code, going over here, opening my terminal, which might need to resize a little bit just to show you, but you can easily go from the terminal. So you can go around your entire editor without ever picking up your mouse. Super nice. Tab allows me to tab to the next buffer or file, whatever you want to call it, on the top of your main editor area. And Shift Tab obviously does the opposite. I also have Tab and Shift Tab for code completions. Tab, Shift Tab, and Control Space to open the documentation for that thing. Right now, I don't have a way to go from this specific window over to this window and then start scrolling on this window. If you have a way to do that, I would love to know, but I don't know how to do that. So for now, this will have to do, because I would love to be able to come here, look at something, and then come over here and then scroll. Okay, space T. Yeah, so I try to create mnemonic keybinds when possible, just because I've tried doing things like 1 for the first and 2 for the second, etc., etc. But to be honest, I end up finding that I just spam through the keys to find what I want instead of thinking about a specific thing that I want to do and then press the exact key to go there. And so space T is to close other editors. So leader T, I'm able to have, you might have like 50 tabs open at the top and it's getting cluttered. So you just press space T and it closes everything on the top. Very nice. File tree start. I'll try to find the video and link it in the description, but I've pulled some ideas from many different videos and GitHub issues across places. And this is very similar to file trees that you'll find in Neovim. For example, space E opens the file tree. And this configuration is very similar to the things that you'd see in Neovim. But people don't think that this is possible in VS Code, but here you go. So space E, leader E, will open your file tree, and you can navigate with HJLK if you want. You can open things with L and close things with J. You can also open things with Enter, whatever you prefer. Let's say you're here and you want to add a file in marketing. Well, you press A to add a file, and we can call this not found. Now let's say we want to go back and we want to add a folder. We can do Shift A, and we can put some components in here. And so this is an example walkthrough of some of the keybinds that you can do. And I can also delete, or I can press, I believe, D to delete. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes. So there you go. There is the fancy Vim file tree. So here are all the configs to do that. I'm not going to walk through every single one of them, but you're going to need all of these in order to do that. There's even paste, cut, copy, new file, new folder. Another really nice command is S to open to the sides. Let's say you're looking for something, you're trying to find it. Oh, I found it. Instead of opening the file, then doing a split, then going back, instead of doing all that, you can instead go over, find the file, and press S. And that will open it as a split on the left. And you can close your file explorer, and you can navigate between the two. Same thing with Shift S, except it goes below. And all of this is about opening files and expanding trees. Terminal start. All of this is super specific to me, but this is what I like. So my keybinds for opening terminals is Control-Shift-J. I interact with the terminal so often that using the built-in VS Code terminal for one-off commands is super handy. And for any long running processes, I'll go over to my terminal space with my window manager, and I can then, for example, hit my long running dev processes and other things that I want like a full screen to do. But for installing packages or doing all that stuff, being able to do it in VS Code is super nice, and there's extensions in Neovim in order to do this. It's just built right out of the gate with VS Code. So all of this is optimized for not really having to move your hands much, and I am using a Kinesis Advantage 360. Shout out Prime for the suggestion. It's a great keyboard. So anyway, so the keybinds for getting around the terminal are here. So J toggles the terminal, N creates a new terminal. As you can see in the bottom left, I have 2 terminals. A and B toggles forward and backwards between the terminals, and I think a lot of these keybinds overlap with some of the extensions in Neovim, but this is what I have. And if I want to quit a terminal, I just press Q while holding Control Shift. So anything related to terminals is Control Shift, and then I have a couple binds to do that. This is a specific cursor keybind. So if you're using cursor and you have like a chat tab open with Command I, if you want to close it, usually like it just doesn't close if you press Escape. So this allows you to close it. Coding start. All right, so these 2 here allow you to tab through suggestions. So this is with tab and shift tab, very handy. One of the extensions in Neovim that's super nice that I really like is the being able to do fuzzy finds. I think it's called Telescope is the extension. In VS Code, obviously it's built in. It doesn't have a preview of the code, but the VS Code quick picker is just fine. And so Command Shift P opens the commands in VS Code. So you can do things like reload the window, and that will refresh your Electron instance with the UI. You can also do things like open a file by doing Command P and then just like searching for a file. Later on, we'll get to some of the other commands that I have, like Command FF for find file. Type in the file name you want, press enter. Sometimes though, you're finding a file and then you don't know exactly which one it is. Maybe they're named the same. And so normally what you'd have to do is you have to use the arrow keys to move around, which is really annoying. And because everything else is related to tab and shift tab, so this enables tabbing through your quick input. This here does. Super nice. Now, unfortunately, VS Code has a bug, and hopefully this will be fixed in the future, but as of right now, there's a GitHub issue currently where Shift Tab just doesn't work in the quick picker, and it's an accessibility bug. Escape closes markers. So there's a lot of times where you're writing code and you have an error and you want to jump to the error. So I have a keybind shortcut for jumping to errors. It's the same as in a lot of Neovim configs. It's bracket D for previous error, and you can keep doing that to toggle between them, and close bracket for next error. And one of the problems is that this marker is what they call it. By default in VS Code, the escape does not close the marker that you're looking at. I don't know why. So this enables you to close the markers. Code actions, tab, shift tab in order to toggle between them. That's here. Here are all of my leader keybind shortcuts. So leader W to write file. I really just like having one hand on the keyboard, especially when I'm scrolling through with my mouse looking at some things, and then you just want to save real quick. So you just space W with the left hand. Space GG opens up Git, and then from here you can do whatever you need. I mostly just use that to get into Git, and then from there I use my mouse. Anyway, space Q is quit and save. Because I have the terminal quit as space Q or Control Shift Q, I like having space Q for quit. It also makes sense from a mnemonics perspective. By default, I prefer it to save rather than save and quit because I don't want to accidentally delete something. Everything's a Git anyway, so if I don't want something, I can do it later. Space CA is code action. I think that's the same in Neovim as well. If you do space CA, you get your code action. I think this is a personal one to me. I have space rename, so I can, for example, come down to this fetcher function and call this fetcher handler, and that will rename all references, similar to if you were to do F2. And some of the other go-to, we have go-to symbol. So this allows you to search for a specific symbol, methods on classes, all of that fun stuff. Find file is the quick picker, the quick open. GD is go to definition. GR is go to references. And as shown earlier, these are the next and previous error slash warning keybinds. And here are the keybinds to split. So if you want to split to the side, do space S, and if you want to split vertically, V. Show hover. So it's a very common thing with Neovim is if you're hovering over something and you want to see its type, you can press Shift K and you will get its type. This is all my harpoon commands. And that's it. All right, so real quick, I'll go through my Aerospace config. So the whole highlighting of windows is done with a package called borders. Super nice. As you can see, whenever I select a window, it gives it a white outline. It's a little harder to see on this bright background. I'm trying to look through here. So a lot of this is defaults. Here's my gaps and things like that. These are my keybinds though for switching between different screens. So Alt is my key for changing focus. And I know for a lot of people it's kind of awkward because Option on macOS is sort of by your thumb in a really weird way, but just because I have thumb clusters on my keyboard, Alt is very, very easy to reach. And you can do Control if you want, but I find that there's a lot of conflicts with my editor's keybinds with that, and my editor's keybinds take priority over Aerospace, my window manager. From a mental perspective, they take priority. So yeah, if you're here and you do HJKL, you can move around, you can move left, you can move right, up, down, etc., etc. If you want to move a specific window up or up, down, or left, right, you can hold Shift while doing a movement key, and that will move the window. So for example, this one here with all of the information on it, I can move over or I can move it down, move it up. Minus and equal will allow you to resize a window. Super handy. So a lot of times you'll have a long running process here with a lot of stuff going on, and you want it to be side by side with your browser. You can move it to your browser instance and then make it nice and small, or as big as you need. A lot of times you need one window big, one window small. So that's how to do that. All of this stuff here basically allows you to navigate directly to a workspace. I'm assuming you read through the Aerospace documentation on how Aerospace works, but basically this is how I switch to the different screens. With mnemonics in mind, I highly recommend setting up on-window detects for your specific programs that you use, which workspace you want them to automatically move to. This saves you a lot of time when you open up a specific program. No matter where you open it up, it will always move and take you to that specific workspace that it's intended to be at. So you're never out of sync with your desired keybinds. All right, and finally, if you want to look more in depth at the configs and my dot files, I'll have them linked in the description. You can just copy and paste them and modify them to how you want. I also have some ZSH configs in here, as well as my brew file, which includes all of the applications that I obviously don't want this entire list, but it's a good idea to have like a brew file to easily re-download all of these things from a, for example, work laptop onto a personal laptop, or in the event that you need to completely wipe your laptop, you'll have all of your applications ready to go for later. And here's my Western config just to make it look nice. Okay, that is all. I hope you enjoy all of the tips and hints. I'm sure that there's a lot of other things that I haven't shown here that I probably missed, but I'm really tired. So, all right, thanks for watching.